Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome everyone to our third installment in the Ministry of Sport and Community Development's Pink Rain campaign, our 2021 panel entitled You Go Girl, hashtag You Go Girl. We're live on the ministry's Facebook page, and we're really happy to join you this afternoon, to be with you, and for you to join us this afternoon for this exciting session. I know it's overcast outside in some areas. There's a bit of a downpour. So hopefully we're all inside, we're all safe, and we can devote the time to listening to today's conversation. I have three really incredible, interesting, really experienced women on the panel, and I can't wait to get to them. If you're tuning in for the first time, I just want to point out that this is the third in our series of panel discussions, which the Ministry of Sport and Community Development is hosting over the next few months. And if you are a regular viewer of the program, you know that we have had two very interesting panels. We've talked about issues, STDs. We've talked about women in sport and how we break some of the cultural barriers that prevent women from getting into sports as athletes, as female athletes, as women warriors, weekend warriors, as well as women in administration. So before I get to our topic for this week and this week's panel, and I just want to introduce and hand it over to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, Mrs. Angela Edwards, to just share with us some of her own thoughts regarding our panel and some of the work that the ministry is engaged in. Mrs. Edwards.
Thank you, Mrs. Duke Westfield, our moderator for today's panel discussion. Our other panelists, Ms. Sonja Johnson, President of the Chess Association, Ms. Annette Knott, Secretary General of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, Ms. Claire Mitchell, President of the National Basketball Federation of Trinidad and Tobago. To all our viewers, I say a pleasant good afternoon despite the somewhat gloomy weather that we have outside. As the moderator referred to, we have had two installments already on the Pink Rain's You Go Girl panel discussion. And this series of panel discussions continues to garner fervent interest and engagement with you, our online audiences. Thus far, your comments and your questions are a testament to your own role in elevating female representation in the sporting sector. In our first two discussions, we delved into sensitive and urgent matters relating to diet, mental health and NCDs, and the role these play in our fitness and on our athletic journeys. We also spoke passionately about fostering a cultural shift, and all our panelists thus far have done much justice to these topics. And for those of you who have been following us, I'm sure you would agree with this. Today's panelists are no different. A powerful lineup of female leaders in traditionally male-dominated fields. Ms. Annette Knott is the Secretary General of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. Ms. Claire Mitchell is President of the National Basketball Federation of Trinidad and Tobago. And Ms. Sonja Johnson is President of the Chess Association. And these women and leaders have come prepared to share insights about women ascending to leadership positions, which include their own testimonials and their own experiences. I guarantee you that this discussion will not only be intense, but also positive and thought-provoking. This afternoon, we are going to touch on some critical subjects, such as the role of current female leaders in sport, in grooming and in preparing the next generation of female leaders. And I'm sure many of you are out there listening right now. The issue of sport organizations having a quota for female representation on boards and committees. The institutional biases and stereotypes that women continue to endure, and the importance of a woman's confidence and courage in successfully navigating leadership responsibilities. Each voice matters, and I encourage you, our audience, to contribute meaningfully to this discussion. The key takeaways from this series will guide the policies and the future planning of the Ministry of Sport and Community Development. We at the Ministry value the needs, interests, and opinions of you, our stakeholders, as well as the insights from sector experts such as our panelists. So as I close, join me in expressing a profound thank you to all our guests today, ably guided by our moderator, Mrs. Duke Westfield. I thank you and I wish you a productive afternoon. Please continue to stay well and be safe. I thank you.
Thank you very much, P.S. Edwards. Really very important words indeed, and definitely you hit the nail squarely on the head, if I could say that, with respect to some of the things that we do want to cover off this afternoon with our panel. And as the permanent secretary said, we do have three very distinguished women in their own right joining us, and I would like to add a little bit to what our PS said in terms of their accomplishments and their ability to be able to speak to some of the issues. So Mrs. Annette Knott is currently the Secretary General of Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, and prior to that, served as its Vice President. She is a highly experienced sports leader, having served in many leadership roles in hockey and sport-related agencies and committees in Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, and globally. She's the current chair of the Women's Commission of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, better known as CANOC, and is a member of the IOC's Athletes Entourage Commission. And I could certainly let you know that I've tried, and there's no use asking. There's no more space on the entourage list for the Trinidad and Tobago team going to Tokyo in a few weeks. So, there we go. I've certainly tried my best. Ms. Sonia Johnson was recently returned as president of the Trinidad and Tobago Chess Association. She's the longest serving female president in the association. She is the current chair of the International Chess Federation Planning and Development Commission, where she is responsible for overseeing and coordinating the activities of the PDC. And Ms. Claire Mitchell is the president of the National Basketball Federation of Trinidad and Tobago, and one of only two female presidents in the Americas into sport. She has worked extensively in the development of the sport locally and across the region, representing the country at many international federations. So as you can see, just a snippet of the resumes, really women who in their own right can speak to some of the issues. Ladies, thank you for joining me this afternoon. And I think we should just kick it off. As the permanent secretary said, we are looking at the question of how we break this cycle and change the game and get more women leaders into our various associations in Trinidad and Tobago. It really at a participatory level, at a leadership and participatory level. Annette, I'd like to kick it off with you. There are 52 national governing bodies for sport by my count, as far as I'm aware, under the ministry. And of those, I think we just have about 12 organizations where women are at the helm or in leadership roles. How does that compare regionally and even internationally based on your experience, given your years of experience? And is that good enough?
Well, I see that I'm the opening bat for all our sports out there. And the opening bat usually has to stand there and do the start the thing for the team. So I'm starting for the team. What I can say about that statistic is that really it's change is happening. It's really slow, but it is happening. The fact that you have both Sonja and Claire on, and they are the first in their associations, means very much to the fact that there are changes coming. I would say even for myself, I'm the first female Secretary General of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, voted in nearly 9 years ago, and so therefore, yes, there is a change. Why did they suddenly realize that maybe these women can do the work? And so breaking the cycle is very important, but it mustn't just happen here, it has to happen globally. and the IOC are very much getting into gender equality, quotas, ensuring that national associations, international federations, it's nice to say that you need to do it, but sometimes you have to be given a little push. And so for CANOC, in our CANOC region, we only have 13% of our presidents from the National Olympic Committees are female, and 20% secretary general. So we could do much, much better than that. And to give a plug for our own Olympic Committee, we are 50-50. And there's only one other Olympic Committee in the region of 29 members, which is St. Lucia, that is also 50-50. So, it's a slow process, but it is happening.
Yeah, yeah. Claire, maybe I take it across to you as our first, I think, female president in the Basketball Federation, Trinidad and Tobago's Basketball Federation. And given your own experience and journey, do you see the change happening? Is it happening fast enough, you think?
Yes, we see the change. I'm seeing the change happening, um, especially in basketball. Um, and a lot of what gives it the impetus is the infrastructure that FIBA has put in place so that it would happen in basketball. You know, before in 2019, comparing referees, that's for instance, referees and table officials in 2019, we have gone up 30% due to a concerted effort to include women in the officiating and coaching areas. Because that has happened, we can see directly measure the difference and the increase.
And Sandra, so congratulations. You were just returned
Thank
as
you.
the president of the Chess Association. Um, your own journey is an interesting one. Not unlike
Yes.
many women in who administer and work in sport. Your children have been part of the sport, and I think as a mother, a lot of women get involved on the basis of the family being part of it. What do you see as your own in terms of your own experience? What do you see as some of the maybe the things that are leading to this turning of the tide?
I think, and I know, I'm glad that you referenced, I have children in this sport because that's exactly how I began, just because of your interest. But then if you're in it as long as I've been, which is almost 6 years, I think it goes a little bit beyond just the children. It becomes then what in it that you think that you could add value. And I feel though that very often you would see into sports that we just used to have a culture. Well, okay, I used to play this sport, and that's why. And if it's male dominated, by extension, administrators would be male. But women are natural administrators. If you think about it, think about women running households, running things in PTAs, traditional, what they call maybe female things. But what this time speaks to, especially with the focus on inclusivity and diversity and so on, you realize though now that women bring this new kind of perspective to the running of organizations in general. And since sport is a microcosm of the society, I think that is what you're seeing what's going on in sport. So the more that the life goes on, you realize that there's this gap between what the community is asking for, what the community is demanding, and what administrators are putting out there to service those needs. And I think this is where the role of the woman comes in, because they're able to quickly assess the diversity in those needs and so on. And because of their own personal experiences or professional, they're able to quickly service it in many different ways.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad that you raised the point about sport being a reflection or a microcosm of the society. So let me put this to all of you and simply, is there a boys club in sports? And it may be based on your experience, Not to put you alone on the spot, because each of you are going to get a chance to weigh in on that one. But Annette, based on your experience, working in not just in a particular sport, but administrating sport across the board and internationally, what would you say to that point?
The answer to that is yes, 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 and continues to be yes.
Okay.
I never forget the first time I went to a Pan Am Sports meeting, and actually it was with Brian Lewis. He was the secretary then, and I was a vice president. And we walked in the room, and of course everybody's in suits. And I counted, and there were 4 women in the room. 4 women in this Pan Am Sports. Well, it's Latin America, etc. And Pan Am Sports still lag behind in terms of women as presidents. It's less than 20%. And it's the US, Canada, and the Caribbean that have the women in charge. So yeah, the whole question of boys club, it's cultural, because I think that women here have better opportunities, because of course our society, just like you said, it's our women here are in charge, and it's not a big deal where we are in charge. But in terms of a boys club internationally, you bet your bottom dollar. And I could go even further to say a boys club that is predominantly one race, one color, especially when you hit Europe. And so that, of course, flows all the way through. So yeah, definitely still boys club. But I think in the Caribbean, we're very lucky that we have more opportunities as women to rise to the top.
But that's certainly reassuring. Claire, based on your experience in basketball, is it still that way?
Claire,
I think we're losing your sound, Claire.
Sorry, my mic was off. Yes, it is that way in basketball. It is that way in the workplace. It is that way all over. Where in basketball you find that the the prize money for women's game would be
Yes.
woefully below that of our male counterparts. The and of course the men will tell you there's a reason for that, that the quality of play is higher, and of course there's a bigger following in terms of the fan base. People that would attend games, and a lot of times you make money in terms of games from your bar and your whatever. So the more people you have coming at games is the better pot you can offer. So you find that women are behind in terms of the development of the sport, and so they're behind in terms of what they offer. And so this happened naturally with men. Now we realize it's not happening with women. We can't sit down and wait for it to happen. So this is why things like the Pink Rain campaign, etc., is really important and timely, so that we could do what we have to do to bring women up, to remove that glass ceiling, and to bring us up to match our male counterparts, where we won't feel that we have to settle.
Yeah.
But so certainly I'll attribute that to the boys club. I'll attribute that to what is the status quo right now. But I'm seeing a shift. I'm seeing a change. I'm seeing that we need those same boys clubs, so we have to be all careful about how we talk about it, because we need their support as well. Not the support of just our husbands and our fathers and sons. We need the support of the men out there in the workplace and in sport, in terms of recognizing that our contribution is on par with theirs, and that we should be rewarded accordingly.
Yeah, and so Sonja, Claire raises a very critical point in terms of that mentorship and sponsorship. Not just in sport, of course. We know that works. We've seen where people have attested to that, even in the corporate sphere. And I think you could speak to that as well. But certainly
Yes.
in sport, how critical is it that we have, that we have that level of sponsorship by men, by leaders across the board, and other administrators, women helping other women as well. Speak to some of those issues and what you have seen that maybe has, have changed things or helped to change.
Thank you. That's a very good question, Nicole. And as you said, mentorship is important, both within the corporate. We've seen within the corporate environment, which is primarily where I have come from, as well as in sport. But I want to address sport in particular because you see the reason why it's so important is the whole question of credibility. Okay, so whether we like it or not, men who've been around the boys club, whatever it is that you call it, those are the ones that have credibility. Those are the ones who have the network, who could just call their friends and say, hey, no, hook this person up. I think they're solid, or you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And their friends will believe them without much evidence. In terms of women, we have to do a little bit more, right? Because, we're not tested, we're not true. There are not enough of us out there for them to say, okay, fine. Generally, we see a path when a woman does this or looks like this or engages in these kinds of activities that we know, okay, we could kind of trust her judgment and so on. So for me, I could understand why there is still this. And for my own particular journey, as you said, the reason why I am here today in chess is because a lot of men were there for me who recognize. They used to tell me, actually, Sandra, you move like a guy. I don't know if that was my justification, but they used to tell me, Sandra, you move like a guy in terms of how you approach things. You're more direct. You don't beat around the bush and so on. That has its positives and negatives. That's a different discussion. But what they saw is that there was somebody that you could trust. So you had to be able to develop these relationships with men in a way that they trusted you. Yeah, they
Yes.
trusted, and by doing many things in terms of making certain decisions and engaging in certain activities, you recognize you were able to garner more trust. And I want to just give a very quick example. So I am the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Chess Association. I'm actually third female. So the first female in Trinidad and Tobago was really in the 1980s. Okay, so chess has been really kind of ahead of the curve in some of those things. But when it comes to the international body, I was given as the first female to get the head of a commission, which was not the female commission. I was the first to get that kind of role. And it was because a guy who met me, it was a very senior person who I didn't vote for when they went up, but understood in my discussions with them what I brought to the table. That I was not about politics and so on. It was about doing what was best for the wider global community. And over time, he trusted me. I didn't know him before, but he trusted me because of the interactions. And because for example, if I wasn't voted, I said why I wasn't. I was very direct. So he understood where I lay, where my values lay, and so on. So because of that, I was able to get a position where people couldn't believe, and actually some people were upset that I got this position because they thought that they should have been teed up for it. So that was key. And of course, even on the local level with the Olympic Committee, Brian Lewis and Annette Knott, I shared this story earlier when we had a prior conversation where Annette and Brian sat with me when I wasn't too sure if I wanted this role. I had gone to Brian and he suggested bring Annette in the discussion to see whether I wanted to lead this. And again, it's that kind of trust that you were able to develop. And because of what he brought to the table, other people were able to then kind of say, okay, Sandra, let's just give this young lady a chance. And that's where I am today.
And
Yeah.
yes, and the rest is history.
Yes.
Mrs. Annette, we spoke a lot. We've spoken about trust. Sonja has raised the question of trust. The permanent secretary also raised the question of confidence. I want to ask you, where do you see some of those traits? Do they play a part? Sonja talked about one guy saying to her, "You move like a guy." I'd like to think that what he meant to say is that, she's confident and she knows what she's about. But in his own particular frame of reference, I think we've all been there as women in key roles. We've all had that particular experience. But Annette, in terms of the question of trust and confidence, earning people's trust, winning over people's trust, walking into a room as you did and not seeing very many faces that reflect your own, to what extent is that confidence critical in taking us forward?
Um, well, I think that there's very much part of how do we break the cycle and how do we make the change. And many women have the skill set, but they probably lack the confidence to do it or the courage to say, I'm going to go up for president. And I think many of the times we have to work a little bit harder as women, to show the men that we are competent, that we do have the skill set, but yet there's still that little barrier. So again, I have to say, like Claire, we really compliment the Ministry of Sport for this pink rain, because what it does is that for the people that are listening, they're hearing the stories of people like us who would have broken the ceiling in some cases where we become the first in any position. But we've done it because we have the confidence or were given the opportunity. But definitely the trust has come because you have the knowledge. You're not going to just, sometimes people ask me this, Annette or Mrs. Now, Coach, how you get there? How you get there? I want to be secretary of the Olympic Committee. And I say, it doesn't just happen overnight. It may be a little bit harder. Some guys, if they're in the right boys club, it happens overnight for them. But for women, it has, and I would say in my case, it's been, I wouldn't call it slog because I enjoyed it. It's been passion for me. It's a commitment that I've enjoyed. But it has to come with a good knowledge base, a good skill set. And when you have that knowledge and skill set, then confidence comes with it. It's like riding a bike. If you have all the skills to ride a bike, you will ride a bike without even thinking twice about it. And it's having that knowledge, that skill set to take on the position that gives you that confidence. And once you've got that confidence, well, sky's the limit. Ceilings, glass, carpet everywhere.
Yeah. Claire, when we spoke our first sort of getting to know you session, you had a particularly interesting story, I would say, in terms of your own journey to where you are now. Can you share with us maybe one of the, maybe one low point or low moment in that journey to leadership, and how you might have been able to, what you did to overcome or accomplish, or how you pulled yourself out? Because I think for a lot of women who are on that journey themselves, it can get difficult. If you feel as if you are sometimes traveling alone, you may not be, but you feel that way. How do you pull yourself out of those moments?
I want to say that the challenges started for all of us as female leaders straight from the cradle, when they said blue for boys, pink for girls, because blue is a strong color and pink is weaker and whatever. And we've been nurtured through all our lives, knowing that even if we are true leaders, and we are, and we strike out there into this male-dominated world to do work, because we were nurtured to know we have the housework, we have all these other stuff to do, we have to prove that we can do what we're trying to do, which is which they'll call outside of the box that we were nurtured in. And we have to do that, be the leader, prove that we're as good as the guys, and still go home and do what we have to do. Whereas, the men, they were not nurtured to do a lot of the other stuff that we have to do. So they could just go out there and be the leaders in the man's world, and they don't have to come back. So you always have to try harder, go harder. Sometimes because you're nurtured to You were raised to be nurturing. Sometimes when you have to make some of the hard decisions, you know, you speak to a man and he'll say, just do it. He don't have any time, just do it. But we would feel we know better, and there's a way to do it and reach a happy medium. And sometimes we regret that we have to give up going for that happy medium and just do it because you work in a man's world and you living in a man's world, so you have to act accordingly. It's really sad when people say when you drive really well and they say, you handle that car like a man. Because in other words, only men are good drivers. And the reality would be less women get into accidents than men. And we drive more because we pick up the children, we drop them off, we do whatever. And everything you do good. I have had someone say to me, even as I was running for going to two incidents. I was going for president in basketball. And I had someone who, he obviously respect me a lot. He said, you have my vote 100%. But why couldn't there be a man in the running that have your qualities? So he was paying me a compliment because he'd say, I have his word, my quality. But he did not even realize what he was saying, in that it would have been better if I was a man. And those are some of the things you have to go. And you have to roll with the punches. You can't take it personally because the person meant it in the best way. I also remember, just this real quick, I remember when I was going up, it was a really, a tough, it was election. And someone said, because I lived in the States for like 20 years and came back here to live. And someone said, don't vote for her, she was deported. And I said, vote for the deportee. Have you ever seen a deportee that came back to Trinidad and Tobago with a 40-foot container with the whole house, the car, the bank account? It means I could break ceilings. So vote for me. I have strength. You have to be ready to just roll with the punches and, accept some of the things that they may tell you. If it's about your professional attitude, then you have to go improve it and do better. But if it's about personal, you have to learn to let that just roll off your back and go on with the professional part of it, and don't be daunted.
You have to have a thick skin. No, you have to have a thick skin. In life, it is about that. You can't. You're right. A lot of times you can't take things personally. People mean things in the best way. They may frame it in a particular context, but a lot of times they do mean it in the best way. And at the end of the day, the deportee, quote unquote, won. So more power to you for that. um, last month, on our panel last month, we spoke about breaking the cycle and dealing with some of the cultural stereotypes that women face, as athletes in particular. And we were talking with some very, some young and also experienced, I would say experienced athletes, about their own challenges. One of the points that they raise, and Annette, I want to kind of turn this to you, as the Secretary General of the TTOC. One of the points they raised was the fact that, you even have situations where, for a lot of female athletes, who may have male coaches, for example, there are those male coaches who may not necessarily appreciate the realities of what it is to be a female athlete. A female athlete who is a mother, for example, or a female athlete going through different life stages. I know that the TTOC hosts, continues to put on its coaching development program, and I wondered if you could talk to us about some of the experiences, why maybe your focus for the coaching development program, and some of the experiences that you have had as a result of that.
So, Claire, Nicole, definitely something that has to be part of a focus in terms of breaking and making the change. And this is from internationally. The IOC, in looking at their gender equality, were aware that only 11% of coaches going to the Olympic Games are female. And when 50% of almost 50% in this case, Paris will definitely be 50% of the athlete population going to the games is female. You think about it, 11% female. what,
Yeah.
of course, it's part and parcel of this whole question of the culture. Coaches are always male and definitely can relate on a different basis. And so, what the TTOC has done over the last 8 years in this administration and under Brian Lewis, we have a program called The Future is Female. And we made a focused decision to ensure that we give female coaches the opportunity. So there are a number of courses, international courses that come to the TTOC each year and through the Olympic Solidarity, etc. And we have focused mainly on female coaches who are in the national system, but just haven't had, whether it's a whole question of confidence to make that step into the arena. But it's very important that for us to help our athletes coming forward, that more and more women get involved, even if you don't necessarily feel you have at the moment the confidence to coach as the main coach. Push, get there, be the assistant coach. Let the girls have somebody around that is female, because it's very important. And very quickly, on the reverse, I was the female coach of a male team, and we went along fine, everybody, almost like a mother figure, but still I was the coach. And one of the guys had a problem and needed to go to the bathroom, but he was too old for me to go like mommy to the bathroom with him. And I was like, oh dear, now if I'm saying that one incident, can you imagine how many incidents female athletes must have where they have these
Yeah.
male coaches and nobody around, and then they have to accept that the male coach. So all I urge everybody out there, any females who are interested in coaching, involved in coaching, any technical, make yourself known. Be confident. You have exactly the same knowledge as the guys. You just need that confidence to go forward. And it is important for our upcoming athletes that we see more female coaches involved at the national level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you never really think about some of the maybe more some of the simpler things in terms of how the engagements work until you are in the situation and you now are confronted with some of these experiences. So I think that is critical. Sonja, you as the current chair of the International Chess Federation in terms of their Planning and Development Commission. Um, what has the experience been like as a female coming from the Caribbean, a woman coming from the Caribbean? What do the numbers look like in terms of international chess and the association? I think just about everybody saw the Queen's Gambit, and
Yes.
so we have this very Hollywood version or notion of what chess is all about and what women who play chess at a master level, what their experience has been like, at least over that period. So maybe you can talk with us about what your experience has been like in terms of from an administrative position.
Thank you very much for that question, Nicole. Yes, it's really interesting you made me start to go back in chess, because the International Chess Federation, just like many other sports, it is really very heavily male dominated, as you know, with grandmasters. I mean, you do even have even double digits in terms of actual grandmasters being female. We have what we call women grandmasters, which is a different classification altogether. So you see, the higher that you go in terms of that level of play, you even have less. And guess what? In administration, there's even less than that, right? So when I mentioned before, me being on this particular commission, because generally who would be in FIDE would be chess players. They would have been a grandmaster, they would have been an international master, and so on. Of course, that's not my experience. But what this particular administration did and said is that, for example, earlier clock, they brought on their ticket a treasurer who was female, which wasn't something, again, that kind of level experience really before. You may have a secretary and so on, but not those kinds of levels. So it signaled that they were open to the need for this diversity. It also signaled that they were open to make sure that they had people who were competent, whether male or female, on within the realm of their leadership positions. And specifically for the Planning and Development Commission, I have like 16 people on my commission, and we were trying to make sure that each commission had at least 25%. I have at least 5 out of the 16, which is just a little bit more, of which 3 or 4 are core, like the core 4. So 4 out of the 6 are women in terms of the core team, like who manages continents, etc. So I made it, it wasn't just because it was a woman, it was just, okay, if there was a woman and a man and so on, and they could do the job, why not give them the opportunity? Because I was given the opportunity to do this. And we've proven time and time again, when women are there working towards a common goal together with our male counterparts. Let's not forget this. This is not just about women, where we are able to share the vision and bring everyone along. We are able to do great things. So that is what we have seen in FIDE. We now have a new FIDE managing director, the first female ever out of Latvia. So to me, she's like my partner in crime in FIDE, in terms of trying to see what we could do to do things differently, how we could make the institution more professional in how it does what it does, how we could focus on some more of those social elements and not just the high-end professional elements, which are generally by and large male, almost exclusively. So we are able to try and now bring that balance now to the institution. So people are now able to see how FIDE now is able to service the needs of not just a few, but now many. Yeah, and we're not just we're not just talking, but we walk in the talk. So I'm happy to be part of that whole thrust. Yes?
Yeah, yeah. And so we've been, and thank you for that, because we've been talking at length about how do we, further advance that shift. And I wanted to put to all three of you, is quota or are quotas the answer? Is that the solution that or one of the solutions that we should be looking at? And maybe Annette, we can start with you, and then Claire, I'd like you to come in as well as Sonja. Are we talking about quotas here?
While we would like to say that as females, I don't want to be part of a quota and I'm better than just being a quota, the reality is that for many organizations that don't consider women, etc., and I'm talking from international level all the way through, you have to put in the quotas. You have to put in quotas because if you don't, people will just continue the same operation, the same culture where they will exclude women. And as I say, it's a lot easier for us here in the Caribbean. I think a lot easier for us in Trinidad and Tobago, because we do get the respect. It's still a little battle, and I'm not making it sound like it's hunky-dory by any means. But I feel that quotas are necessary to ensure that we have the numbers and that there's the right balance in any organization, because the balance is important. I mean, we were being accused with the future is female because we only focused on the coaches female. Some of the men say, so, oh girl, you don't get a chance to get a coaching course. Listen, you had all the chances for the last, however, donkeys years. Give us a little blind now. But yeah, quotas are important. Very important. Yeah. I'm sure Sandra and Claire have lots to say on that too.
Claire, what are your thoughts on quotas? Would it work in basketball?
Yes, I say quotas are very important because, as you know, when you have a sport where people are accustomed doing one thing and it's been working for them that one way, one of the ways to force the change, if it's not happening, is to put in quotas. And FIBA has recently done that this year. They actually made some changes to the FIBA statutes, that the promotion of women, at all levels of basketball governance become part of the mission. That the genders shall be represented on executive committees, where only in 2019 did FIBA see the first female president of FIBA Americas. Right now she is the president. It was a big deal. And from 2019, FIBA put in that FIBA pillar. Quotas is important, but the infrastructure that has to be put in place to support, you might say you have a quota and just put X number of people, but you must have the infrastructure in place to support the push and the growth. So you would say it's not just you have a quota and you put somebody in, but what do you have in place as the support mechanism? And so because FIBA made it one of their pillars in 2019, they made it one of their strategic pillars. They were able to put in the goals, to increase female player participation, to develop coaches and officials, to increase, to maximize international competitions, where now, as much as possible, the female aspect of the sport is they're trying to mirror the male aspect in terms of tournaments, women starting to play for more money, etc. It's not just about the quota and say X number of people should be in, but what are you doing to actively support that? So you have the quota, then you have to set the goals, and then you have to put the rules and the parameters in place and the support thing.
Yeah.
I want to give one little quick anecdote that I played netball at one time. And when I played netball, that's a female sport. One of the rules was not men. So you find after you had a baby, I remember after you had your baby, the coach will call you, because if you're a shooter or whatever, they know they can lose you. They would call you to come back out. So you come back out to play, you'd say, but no babysitter, you bring your baby. There are so many women there. While you're on the court playing, somebody have your baby. When you come back off the court, you can hardly get your baby back. And that shows you, that's part of the culture that was in netball. When we went and we were joined with New Zealand and Australia to win the 1979 World Netball tournament at home. Mm-hmm. And they have a strong female base. It's female. And until male-dominated sports start to mirror that, the behavior of those sports that are for female, we would not get to where we are.
Yes, I saw you.
The next question. I think what Claire said about having the quotas but must have a structure, that is so important, because I know of a sport here in Trinidad and Tobago, very male-dominated sport. They would have to have quotas from the International Federation. They put the women on the board and then didn't give them anything to do. So that very, very much, very important. So that they were there because they ticked the box from the International Federation, but they didn't give them very much to do. They kind of just had them on the sideline. So that's not what the quotas is. Quotas, but I agree with Claire totally. They must have the structure to follow it up. Yeah.
So Sonja, it's clearly yes to quotas, at least from Claire and Annette, and quotas not as window dressing. Real structured, intentional activity and responsibility. How do you see that playing out?
Okay, so I was fortunate to be in a meeting in 2019 in Kazakhstan, where the chair of the Women's Commission actually raised this whole idea of quotas. And of course, it's in a room which is almost all men, right? I mean, I am sitting there and I'm like, this girl, real brave boy, right? But I felt for her, and I was so happy because it was well received. But I think what you saw in the room where people were saying, but how are we going to do this? And you could see, because they're like, okay, in principle, it sounds good to us. And it's saying, okay, I think I could try and check the box, but then what do I do? And Claire is clearly showing that, okay, so you do one of this, but then what is the enabling infrastructure that you have within the organization in order to do that? Unfortunately, where I sit in the Planning and Development Commission, I was kind of charged with trying to help some of that, because through my commission, we developed the whole concept of key performance indicators, right? So if things don't get measured, they don't get done. Okay, so it's not about just having a quote. Okay, number of women, how many trainers, if you have a program, how many people are participating, if people are going to the international tournaments, how many girls, how many boys, how many are active. So we have a whole host of KPIs within the FIDE, the International Chess Federation, that tries to help us to reach to go there. Of course, it will take some time for some federations to really reach the limit, but we need to start somewhere. So it started with FIDE having the 25% threshold, administrators, players, because we were below all those metrics and everything. Okay, we're still below globally, that is. As I said, I think I'd mentioned before, the younger you are, the metric is better in terms of participation. But the higher you go, in terms of play and so on, it's not there. So therefore, by doing things like having the KPIs, which fortunately I am able to track and report on, then we could see how are we doing towards that end. So I'm fortunate to see where they had the goal and to be part of developing the infrastructure to see how we can get help federations along their path to achieve that goal.
Yeah, I like that a lot in terms of what you talk about, key performance indicators, what gets measured gets done. We've seen, that we know that in the business sphere, we know that in our daily lives, even as people conducting, taking care of a home. So I think, when you look at some of those critical aspects of if you want to really execute, in a sport or in that area, then there's some things that you do have to do deliberately and put a stake in the ground to check to see where you are. We have a question coming in. As I said, we're streaming live on Facebook, and our audience is locked on, listening intently. So we do have a question coming in, and I want to, throw it out to you. What are some of the unique experiences or perspectives that you think women can offer? And I think we've kind of talked about this in many different ways, but we can certainly maybe identify some more that women can offer to sport and to sport management. Claire, can I start with you on that?
Time management. Oh, time management. Did I say time management? Okay, time management. Out in the fires, the patience to see beyond what's on the surface and out in the fires, the staying power, patience. Again, did I say patience? So I think time management, patience, our experience in all that we do as parents, which spans the whole spectrum, all that we do as a parent and as an employee and a mother and a volunteer, all those things we bring to the table and the experience that we've had doing it.
Yeah. Sonja, you cited, or at least you were described as being no nonsense. And I guess that stems from your business background and your business experience. Would you cite that as maybe one of the attributes as well?
I would cite that as one, but not the primary in this particular case. I mean, because of my experience, I brought that to the table. But I think what women bring is compassion. And I, like some guys say, oh gosh, we're not taking on that issue, not making, come on, because it's not a guy thing, or, but women bring compassion because you know what they do? They would stop and listen to what you are not saying. They won't just look at what is being presented and say, okay, fine, he good. Look at him here again, or he good now, right? They would go a step further and say, well, here now, I know this guy. This is not normal. Something is happening here. Let me find out, because they want to get to the bottom of it. They want to make sure that you're okay. It's just like in your family. Yeah, you want to make sure that your family, they're good, they're safe. I have a bad day if my family is not in a good place. So in a way, women bring that ability to show compassion, perhaps to listen a little bit more, maybe sometimes not to judge. Yeah, because of their own unique. So I want to actually add that to the mix for women.
Yeah, and I can certainly endorse that. I had a manager once who always reminded me, especially in my role as a communicator, he always reminded me, you have to listen for what people don't say as much as you listen for what they do say, and that is something that has never left me, certainly in my career. Some of the things that I've had to do. Annette, you've sat on many a board. You've walked into many a room in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean, abroad. Maybe not all the time, in the, walked into a room in the most welcoming of ways. What are some of those attributes that you have seen, certainly for yourself, but other women are able to bring to the table?
Um, I think that I would, and I'll have to go on what I would have said for myself. That what would have given me the confidence is that I know who I am. I know what I stand for, my values, my integrity, etc. And therefore, I trust my inner self that I would be able to bring whatever attributes that I bring to any part of my life. And so when we're talking a lot about what women do, women have a lot more balance than men do in terms of life in general. So maybe that type of balance, and definitely I would say that part and parcel of what gives me confidence is the fact that maybe we work a little harder at whatever we're doing. So, in other words, I'm coming to this Pink Rain lecture today, and I thought, oh, you know what? I better look up the Brighton Declaration. We might do a little more research and be a little bit more, trying to find the knowledge rather than the guys who will try and bluff their way, blase their way. So I think that women are a little bit more methodical and approach things in a much more methodical way. That might be part and parcel of being in charge of a family, but not everybody who's online is a mother or etc. But maybe just because our approach to things in life is very different. So if I can just use this example, I was the first female chef de mission going to the Olympic Games in 2012. And I got a long list from my male counterparts of what I need to do and what I should do and how I should do it. And I said, why are they telling me all of this? I know who I am. I know how to do. I know what I have to do. And I just took not what the men would do, as Sonia said, what the men will say they do, or Claire, they needed a man who liked her. I just decided I would bring whatever my qualities are to the team. And I didn't look for anything special. And it was, to date, the most successful Olympic Games that we have had in 2012. We had absolutely no disciplinary problems with anybody, none of the athletes. We had a very smooth games. It was fantastic games. And so afterwards, when I reflected and I thought, Juanet, what quality did you bring to that team? And it was that quality of perhaps calm, of perhaps being a mother, having that balance, that it wasn't about judging anybody. And and I think that I looked for the qualities that I had and not what I should have if I was a male. I looked for what is the best that women can bring to the table. And it has served me very well. It definitely served me well in 2020.
Yeah, well, I certainly can't imagine anybody lacking discipline around you, Annette. So I am not surprised by that statistic. How are you going? How are you going to misbehave around Mrs. Knott? That's just not going to happen.
Okay.
But it did point to me a statistic that I have always that I read some time ago, but I think has a lot of to a lot of extent has not changed, in the sense that when women go after a job, you find that a lot of us, more of us than not, maybe we ensure, or we try to tick um, every single box on that JD. We feel that we have to, we have to be fluent in a foreign language. We have to have a master's. We have to have a first degree. We have to have this. We have to have 10 years experience in the industry or the role. Women we tend to look at all of the attributes and try to meet as many as, all of them, if not as many of them as possible. Whereas what the statistic indicated is that for men, the confidence is so maybe ingrained, as Claire pointed to earlier, that they identify what they bring to the table and they go with that. And I think that's something that a lot of women can think about in terms of how they move through not just their activities in sport as administrators or volunteers, but also in their daily lives, in their careers as well. So I think a lot of the attributes that you all have pointed to have really been valuable, and I think will worth sharing for a lot of the women. With that, I wanna maybe bring the conversation to a wrap. We've talked a lot. We've talked about a lot of the issues, but I'd like to give each of you just an opportunity to give some of your closing thoughts on on all that we have discussed and where we are, and maybe add to that one thing that you think we need to do more deliberately. And Claire, I'd like to start with you. So, how you've seen our conversation go, and what are some of the things that you'd like to leave our audience with, and maybe one thing that you think we do need to do deliberately when it comes to women in sport and sport leadership.
Claire, you're
That,
on mute,
yes,
my
Claire,
love.
you're back. Yeah, okay, good. We're hearing you now, Claire. You're on mute for a little
yeah.
bit.
Okay, I don't know who muted me, but so what we I sit here and I looked at all the women around the table, and I realized what we all bring to the table: strength of character. We are not shy. We know what we want and what we stand for, and we'll go after it. And so we realize that, those are some of the things that strong women have going for them. What we need, like I said earlier, I'm just going to reiterate that we need the infrastructure that is in place that would support us to go to where we want to go. We need even to we need to focus on nurturing other women so that it wouldn't just be us moving on, but us making the way for young leaders coming up, teaching them what we know, having them work with us as mentors so that they would understand, the road we're traveling. And they can also at the same time bring some of the new things that they bring to the table that would help us to understand, what we need to do going forward. So I believe we need to change the culture of women being placed in a box. We need to understand that we are just all people, and that leaders would come on merit, not necessarily on sex. So that if sometimes we stop looking at the sex and just look at what the paperwork, what the track record says, and support that in very much the same way that we would support whether it's a male or female. And of course, I just want to say again, what I would want to leave is that we need to nurture. Don't just put the quotas in place, but put the infrastructure in place, put the goals in place, the measurable goals. Check those goals to see how we meet in them. Change around if it's not working. But certainly we can't just sit back and say that we expect to have X number of female leaders and not put stuff in place to promote that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sandra?
Sure. Thanks very much. I think one of the things that resonate with me that I think that we need to have is that we need to focus on building more female mentors. When I think back in my life growing up in Belmont as a young child, I was fortunate to have some mentors in my mom, in my grandmother, my aunt, all of us from St. Margaret's Lane in Belmont. And what you want is that you want other people to be able to relate and empathize. That if this girl who never used to speak in class and so on could still reach where she is, with the kind of role that she is, maybe from the background that she came from, that means that I could do it too. And that, to me, I think helps to build the confidence. The more mentors that you see with diverse experiences and so on, you're going to be able to touch somebody somewhere. So I think that that's important for us to really focus on building that mentors, even if it's as part of this Pink Rain campaign or any other program from the TTOC, which I know that they're beginning to do now. And what I want to leave for all of you now is just a couple of things that I think that kind of guide me in terms of how I do what I do. And I think one, Annette touched on it, it's okay to be confident. You know, sometimes people may be threatened. It's okay to be confident. Be confident. You know, you know your stuff. You know you have the information. You know you did the research. Go forth. Go. Be confident. Also, it's important to have courage, because in this environment, you see there's a dearth of courage. You know, it's always easy to take the easy way out. It's always the first path to take the easy way out. We as women, we are accustomed to being courageous in the management of our households, or even if we don't have children and so on, but other kinds of groups that we may manage. So be courageous. Let's also remember to be compassionate, care about people. This is what I think we really bring to the table. We have that down packed, and I love us for it. And remember, in the end, we got this. Thank you.
Sonja, you're indeed a strong marketer. Courage, confidence. I mean, you hit the 3 C's for everyone, and you had your closing, and I think that is that's critical. So Annette, it's your turn now, and I know that you have some very keen thoughts in terms of all that we've discussed today, and maybe some additional thoughts that you want to leave with our audience.
I think to begin with, the theme, breaking the cycle, making the change, is really an excellent theme. And I really commend the Ministry of Sport, the group, anybody involved with the whole Pink Rain project. I really have to congratulate you on picking just the right topics that will really make the discussion meaningful. So I say, I look at myself over the past 40 years in sport, and I ask myself, did I break the cycle? Did I make a change? And I have been first in one or two positions, as I said earlier, as the Secretary General. And so therefore now, it's an important theme to me. I'm not the person who invented the saying, but it's a very important saying, especially for us women, and women in the diverse groups as well. And that phrase is, you have to see it to be it. And I'm hoping that today, everybody who's been listening in and who may perhaps not have the 3 C's as Sonja said, that you would gain that confidence, because you've seen us. We're just 3 ordinary women who have pushed our way with our own confidence, been ourselves, and have made it into, without any support from any boys club, have made it to where we are because we have worked at it and used all the things that we talked about today. But what's important now is that you see us here. You see us in these positions. And now that you see us, we can let you know that you've seen it to be it. And one of the things that I would say as Secretary General of the Olympic Committee, that I am now part of a culture that values the full involvement of women in every aspect of sport, not just sport and physical activity, not just being in terms of administration and leadership, but I want to see the women in the forefront in every aspect of sport. And if
you for a minute, and I want to make sure we get everything. So
So I'm hoping that, as I said, I don't know if the last part was it. I'm saying that I'm happy to be part of a culture in the TTOC that values the full involvement of women in every aspect of sport. And I really want us not to see us as just as leaders, but the fact that there will be more coaches and women, and that you see people like us as mentors. And as I said before, the theme, you have to see it to be it. And I'm sure all of you out there can be it. And so I expect the stats in the next 5 to 10 years to change radically. We're seeing more and more.
Yeah.
It's happening. And yes, we have the opportunities. Let's do it.
Yeah, I certainly am very hopeful myself, and I really could not have wrapped it a better way. It's been indeed a privilege for me to have this conversation with the three of you. I think you've hit so many of the right and important notes in terms of where we are as a society, in terms of engagement and involvement of women in leadership in sport. And we're very specific in terms of that conversation today. And it's about balance as well. You know, I think you pointed to the fact it's not necessarily that we're looking for a flip of the switch or an overturning, but indeed a balance and a recognition that we all bring something to the table that's valuable. Claire talked about, you know, that sort of knowledge and all of those attributes that women can bring and can add to the discussion. You know, Sonja, and I'm gonna dub the three C's. You know, that courage and that confidence and that compassion, really critical, that we sometimes don't necessarily take for granted. Like, you know, to be very honest, there's some things that we just naturally know how to do, and we just do them. And I think, you know, we do need to recognize that those values and those capabilities can have impact. Annette, you know, recognizing that it has to be deliberate. You know, the agencies and organizations have to prepare the space, have to create the space. And just by seeing the three of you and hearing your journey and your story, I think that makes it makes for a really great opportunity and springboard. So, you know, with that, I really want to say thank you to the three of you, Claire Mitchell, Sonja Johnson, and Annette Knott. Your contributions today have been really spectacular, and I thank you for the conversation. In wrapping up, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to thank our committed sponsors to the Pink Rain campaign and the ongoing activities. You know, Massey Distributors of Ocean Spray, distributed by Massey Distributors, Gatorade, distributed by Vemco, and Playtex, distributed by Shine Distributors. We do have to work with our sponsors. Everybody in sport knows that. You know, you can't, there are lots of things that you can't do without your sponsors. So we do thank you for your ongoing contribution and your commitment to this program. And certainly thank you to the Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Edwards, who spoke earlier, and to the Ministry of Sport and Community Development. As Annette said, we could not have done any of this if the ministry did not see it fit, and the Minister Kajou, did not see it fit to really propel and to launch this program a few years ago, and then to propel the conversation even further. So with that, I want to thank everyone, our online viewers. Thank you for joining us today. We do have another panel in the month of July, so do look out for the advertisements. We're going to have another spirited and dynamic conversation. I have no doubt of that. So I will leave you this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed our session. My name is Nicole Duke Westfield, and this has been You Go Girl, our panel discussion. Thanks, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Thank you, ladies. Bye.